Good morning. It's Sunday and it's another day in Sabah's way of life. Today's talk is going to be very different. It's raining outside and I really want to talk to you about some extremely spiritual, some kind of spiritual engagement coming from several books that I've read and experiences. So it's going to be a slightly longer video, and those of you who've watched a few of the talks and what I do every day, if you engage with it, because it will only be a few people, then grab yourself a cup of tea and sit down and listen carefully to what I'm saying. So yesterday, one of my viewers who I've known even beforehand for a couple of years now, stemming back from a Telegram group that I had, she has always been an advocate of my work, which I love, and is a wonderful human being. But she sent me a link to a gentleman who is talking about the Qur'an. As you all know, I'm very interested in the Qur'an and I'm a student of the Qur'an, and I'm studying it intently in English, of course, which is my native language. I was born here. My mother tongue is actually Urdu and I can speak it fluently. But she sent me a link and I listened to this link, and this gentleman who's now studying the Qur'an himself is an Indo-Pakistani individual whose mother tongue is also Urdu. Nonetheless, you all know I am studying Sam Geran's translation. His work is incredible. However, it's always important, and I've always stated this, to have different perspectives, because as a student of the Qur'an and as a true, honest, authentic teacher of the Qur'an, that teacher would always state, this is just my viewpoint, this is what I see, but you go in yourself, read it yourself and make your own decision, make your own choices on what it means to you. And whenever anyone states that, I have a lot of respect, because that's what I do. It's important to understand I have never ever followed the majority, and the one time that I have done that in my early years, where I'm a feminist. In my time, the feminism was go out and work. You can be equal to men and you can make as much money, if not more than men, and blah, blah, blah. And I did all that because I had this innate intelligence and flair, and I used that to create the power in business. I was in a financial business, and yes, that was it. It served me well, but it also caused a huge number of problems, because I believed in group think. I believed in the cult of feminism, which is what it is. That lasted a number of years, but in other realms in that time, I was never a follower of any particular media nonsense that was put in front of me. I never believed it. I questioned everything. So let me just fast forward. When she sent me this link yesterday, I listened to this gentleman, and it was a sledgehammer that hit me. A sledgehammer hit me because what I was listening to in a number of his videos, I'm going to share one of his videos below, but that's not the one that hit me with the sledgehammer. This one was mind-blowing, but it was a previous one. Why? Because I understood how he thought, and perhaps there was something about me that related to him because of his background and culture. But what it did for me was that it confirmed so many feelings I had, and they are feelings, understandings, mystic, esoteric understandings, that once upon a time one would say, well, esotericism is nonsense. It isn't. It's a kind of mysticism. It confirmed so many of them that he states is what the Qur'an is all about the connection between you, the human being, and God. You, the human being, and God. And it is not something that is of this earthly realm. Now, let me now explain. Back in 2020, all of us have this. This is not just unique to me. Many of us have dreams. I don't know what dreams mean. I don't have enough understanding. All I know is that I had a dream. And in that dream, I saw a book in a language I kind of recognised, but didn't recognise. It was kind of Arabic, but wasn't Arabic. And the following morning, I contacted a friend of mine and explained, I don't know what this language was. It was actually going from left. The book opened on the left, but there were two sides of the book. The first half of the book was English, and the second half, as I flicked through, was a different language that looked like Arabic. But the beginning of that book was on the other side, the end of the book, going that way. It's very strange. So I contacted a friend of mine who's quite a learned person and asked, what is that language? And he brought me a book. He doesn't live too far away, and he brought me the Dead Sea Scrolls to have a look at. And he said, was it this? And not that it was the Dead Sea Scrolls. He showed me the language, and it was, and that was Aramaic. Now, as soon as I saw that, I thought, I've got to look. This is no magic. What I am saying to you is that didn't happen by accident. That is God's work. And we all have it. Every single one of us can connect to God, the universal mind, if we focus on that. It's not trying to do something. It's living a way of life that is in connection with God and with nature. So I started to do some research on this, and I wanted to know more about Aramaic. I was interested. I'd started to read a lot and started to question a lot. And a lot of things had happened which are very mystical that I didn't ignore, because they happen once, they happen twice, they happen thrice, and it goes beyond coincidence, even though it is a coincidence. And this book came up during my research, and this is the book here. It's called Prayers of the Cosmos, and the book is written by Neil Douglas Klotz, and he talks about reflections on the original meaning of Jesus's words. Now, when I say this to you, I'm not talking about Jesus and the Bible. No, this has nothing to do with religion. Religion is a man-made phenomenon. It has nothing to do with the word of God, the message from God. This is just this gentleman who clearly related to Jesus because he's a Christian, and he's been studying Aramaic. This particular individual had been studying Aramaic. You would have to get the book yourself. I'm not here to talk about the entire, what the book is about. I'm just going to read some parts of it. And I started to read a little bit about it. And this is what I want to share with you, because it's not just this book, it's all the other books that I am reading, and most importantly, the Qur'an, which I'm beginning to realise is a reflection of God's words, which kind of makes sense with this book as well. So let me just read a few things, right? What he talks about is that he's talking about Aramaic now, the language of Aramaic. He has studied Aramaic. So, a tradition of both native Middle Eastern and Hebraic mysticism, I'll come back to that in a minute, says that each statement of sacred teaching in Aramaic must be examined from at least 3 points of view. So what he's saying is that the language of Aramaic is not just considered from a literal standpoint. And you need to bear in mind here that Arabic, especially classical Arabic, and more so the Arabic of the Qur'an, is a derivative of Aramaic. Hebrew, ancient Hebrew, as he says, can be argued is a derivative of Aramaic, but other scholars say Aramaic is a derivative of Hebrew. I don't know the answer to that. Nonetheless, that was the language of the Middle East at that time, and that was also the language of Jesus. This is before Greek, or when Greek wasn't on the scene in this area at that time. I think that happened after Alexander the Great. So he says that it must be examined from 3 points of view: the intellectual, which I would argue is our left brain, the metaphorical, and the universal, which is mystical. He states it's mystical, and I would agree with him. Now, what he says is the intellectual, I'm kind of shortening it, the intellectual is the literal meaning. According to native Middle Eastern mysticism, however, each Aramaic word presents several possible literal translations. So, for example, blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth, could be translated very easily as blessed are the gentle, or blessed are those who have softened the rigidity within them. The word for earth in Aramaic also carries the meanings of earthiness, the natural abundance of nature, and everything that appears in particular forms. Now, from the second viewpoint of understanding the language of Aramaic, we consider how a statement or story presents a metaphor in our lives. Or in the lives of a community. So what he refers to is that we need to awaken to our poetic sensibility. We must participate in recreating meanings from several possible literal translations. Now, from the third viewpoint, I am moving on a little bit here. From the third viewpoint, the universal or mystical understanding comes to a truth of the experience pointed to by a particular statement. So what he's saying is that when you're reading something in Aramaic, or when you're reading the Qur'an, for me that makes, I can relate to it immediately, you must embrace the wordless experience to which the living words of a mystic point. Okay, it's very, very interesting. So what he's saying is that even classical Arabic, this is how I am reading it, you can do your own research, classical Arabic and definitely Aramaic had different levels of meaning. And what's happened today is that our language, I'm just going to read that, meant to resonate many levels of meaning, at least the intellectual, metaphorical and universal, and they've been whittled down to become wholly gross in their nature. What he means by that is restricted to a material and a particular expression. And he says, so you're over-literalizing something. Now, what he then goes on to say, so this especially happened in the Newtonian era, according to Douglas Klotz. He said what that caused is a repression of the mystical cosmology that Aramaic presented, and an unnatural division between God, nature, and humanity. Let me repeat that. An unnatural division between God, nature, and humanity. People who were close to the earth didn't understand that. And that crept into our language with the advent of modern civilization. So what he says, I'm going to move on, that Hebrew and Arabic are expressions of Aramaic. And he's very clear here. He says the Aramaic language is close to the earth, rich in images of planting and harvesting, and full of views of the natural wonder of the cosmos. I really would like you to pay attention to what I've just said And if you have listened to this video thus far, then also listen to the one I'm going to share below by Moses is his pseudonym name. It's in English, and he talks about the Qur'an and what it isn't and what it is, and how it's been bastardized over the last 1400 years and is not what it's taken as today. In fact, what it really is a almost cosmic message from God when the words are understood. And of course, when you understand it like this, you'll realize it has so many different layers, and you would have to engage. You're actually engaging with the word of God, and you have to engage with it individually. And you'll start feeling a murmur in your heart. I felt that a long time ago, but was drawn. Look how I have been drawn to the Qur'an when I used to run from it almost all my life. It's only in the last few years that the journey has begun to be drawn to the words of God. I was drawn to the words of God a long time ago, but the Qur'an has come here to give me a much richer experience. I'll put more notes down below, and for now, have a lovely Sunday. The weather here is not good, it's been raining, and once it gets better, I'll get on with my seed sowing.